Então, isso é absolutamente verdade.
However, in the world as it is, there's a certain balance between learning and teaching, where the teaching is so overbalanced.
Que o ensino está tão mais desbalanceado
compared with the importance of learning,
comparado com a importância do aprendizado,
that it might become true to say that our task is to evaluate learning at the expense of teaching.
Yeah.
Yes, so I'd like to just say something about how I see the role of technology in one aspect of how the construction of learning and teaching has taken place. And of course I'm oversimplifying, but within this concept I'm going to recognize 3 stages of learning. Now these are not stages like Piaget might talk about of the nature of the brain or the mind. They're stages in the relationship between the individual and knowledge. So stage 1 happens when the baby is born.
O estágio 1 acontece quando a criança nasce.
And from that time there starts a process of learning by exploration, by touching. Everything's put in the mouth, it's whatever. Of course, it's not only related to things, it's people as well, but there's a learning going on that's driven by the individual. That baby is determining. Parents might say, doing this, but they might think they are determining what the baby has learned, but it's only a minor effect. Primarily the infant is learning in a self-directed way. Now, there comes a time when the infant is seeing a wider world than can be touched and felt. So the questions in the child's mind aren't only about this and this and this that I can see, but something I heard about, that I saw a picture about, that I imagined. And I think here the child enters into a precarious and dangerous situation. Because not necessarily, but I think in point of fact in our societies, there's now a shift from experiential learning by exploring to another kind of learning, which is learning by being told. Because you have to find adults who will tell you things. And this stage reaches its climax in school. And I think it's an exaggeration, but there's a lot of truth if one said that when you go to school, the trauma is you must stop learning and you must now accept being taught. Now then that stage, so that's stage 2. It's school, it's learning by being taught, it's deposits, and now I think many children are destroyed by that, they're strangled. Some of course survive it, and all of us survived it, and that's one reason why it's often dangerous discussing these questions among intellectual people, because we, in spite of the school, what happened to us was that in the course of this stage 2, we learned certain skills. We learned to read, for example. We learned to use libraries. We learned now to be able to explore directly a much wider world. Now, and I think that there's an important sense in which stage 3 is going back to stage 1. I mean, for those who have survived the stage 2, creative people in a laboratory, in a philosophy seminar, an artist, a businessman, a journalist, all the people in the world who are able to, despite all the restrictions in the world we live in, to find a way of living creatively. They are very much like the baby again, that we explore, it's driven from inside, it's experiential, it's not so verbal, it's not by being told. So now I want to tell a story about my grandson that shows, I think, how new technologies might change that pattern. When this grandson was 3 years old, I was sitting there and I saw him go and take from a shelf a videotape, put it in a VCR and press the buttons, and he said he forgot to rewind it, and he pressed the button and he rewound it, and then he played the videotape. Now, what is interesting is that this child for the next 30 minutes spent the next 30 minutes immersed in a piece of the world that was beyond his reach. This particular tape was about road-making machines, all those big machines at the side of the road. They're very fascinating for children. And he loves this tape, and he's gotten to know much more about these machines than I ever will. And I noticed the difference when we drive in the car and he sees one of the machines. He asks more intelligent questions than I can because he's thought about it more. Now, you see, we've got to see what's remarkable about this. My first, when this incident happened, I saw him. The first thing that amazed me was this little child working this machine. I was amazed. It's amazing. There's this child working this VCR machine, and many adults don't know how to do that. But we really shouldn't be amazed at that, because it's not more complex than putting his toys away or getting his clothes out of the drawer. It's not more, working these machines is not more complex in any way than the things that 3-year-old children all do. So that's not what's amazing. So what's really amazing is the comparison between what he could do at 3 and what I could do at 3. Because if I was interested in road-making machines, it was quite a few years later than 3 where I would know enough to be able to learn something about it, except by asking somebody and being told. So here I see the big break, that what we're seeing is that stage 2 is becoming unraveled as a necessary stage, and that this child is beginning to short-circuit stage 2. And with what I saw there with this grandson who's got a few videotapes, it's only scratching the surface, just the beginning. It was already just a few years later, this happened 2 years ago, he could be having a CD-ROM and having an interactive, or he could use the internet and have that whole range, and not just a few videotapes or CDs that he has in his house, but the whole range of human knowledge that in principle is accessible to him. So that's the end of my speech, really, that I think that the key point about this technology in education is that it short-circuits the stage 2. It enables us to not put children through that traumatic and dangerous, precarious process of the schooling and the... Now, of course, I said this in a non-political way, and I don't mean at all to imply that it is only that I don't think that school and the banking model of knowledge and so on is just politically neutral. It's been used by social structures as a basis for all sorts of conservatism and oppressive kinds, of policies. However, I think I see in these little situations the possibility that 3, 4, 5, very small children are better, and they've got a new instrument to refuse the oppression, to refuse to be placed in this position and to maintain their curiosity and their own sense of their own intellectual power that they had when they were born. See,